Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on the Spanish tragedy, and guess what? We get to hear from Hieronimo again today. We're in what some versions call Act 3, Scene 14. Some versions call this Act 3, Scene 13 because there was that 12a that we had to deal with. But this is a scene that felt like it was going to be a turning point for Hieronimo. He knows that the people around him have started to notice that he's behaving oddly and not dealing with his grief very well and that sort of thing. And he was like, I need to sort of get my things together and still do the job that I was supposed to be doing for other people. So he shows up to the court and he's ready to advocate on behalf of people that come and bring him suits. And 3 people bring suits to him, like a couple of bonds and a lease. And then there's an older gentleman also there with them. And when he notices that the older gentleman isn't talking, he says, what's up with that? And the older gentleman says, well, you can't really help me. And he's like, what's the problem? And he says, my son was murdered, which sets Hieronimo off again. And he starts to sort of emphasize with the older man and then goes like he's going to give him a handkerchief, but it's the handkerchief that Hieronimo had dipped in Horatio's blood when he found him dead. So he's like, no, I can't give that one. But he starts giving all of the rest of his stuff away, his money, his other handkerchiefs, all kinds of things. And the other people around him are like, wow, look at him. He's being so generous. And he says, see, oh, see thy shame, Hieronimo. See here a loving father to his son. Behold the sorrows and the sad laments that he delivereth for his son's decease. If love's effects so strive in lesser things, if love enforce such moods in meaner wits, if love express such power in poor estates, Hieronimo, when as a raging sea, tossed with the wind and tide, o'erturnest then the upper billows' course of waves to keep, whilst lesser waters labour in the deep, then shamest thou not, Hieronimo, to neglect the sweet revenge of thy Horatio? Though on this earth justice will not be found, I'll down to hell, and in this passion knock at the dismal gates of Pluto's court, getting by force, as once Alcides did, a troop of furies and tormenting hags to torture Don Lorenzo and the rest. Yet, lest the triple-headed porter should deny my passage to the slimy strand, the Thracian poet thou shalt counterfeit. Come on, old father, be my Orpheus, and if thou canst no notes upon the harp, then sound the burden of thy sore heart's grief, till we do gain that Proserpine might grant revenge on them that murdered my son. Then will I rent and tear them thus and thus, shivering their limbs in pieces with my teeth. And then he starts ripping things up by putting them in his mouth and tearing up the bonds that the guys had given him. But anyway, real quick, what he's talking about in here, he was going to try to act a little more normal and do normal things, but then he sees this old man, and he sees this man who has a much lower status in society than Hieronimo does, and he sees how that old man's murdered son affects him, how much he is grieving, how much he wants help, how sad he is about the whole thing. And he's like, if that can happen to somebody of like a really low stature, imagine me, who has status in society, like given my position, is it now not shameful if I don't get revenge for Horatio's death? And he's like, I know that it's probably not going to happen here on earth, but I will follow them to hell and get all of the gods of the underworld on my side. And I'll get this man to come with me. He can sing to Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, so that we can get all the way down to hell. And there I will get my revenge on Balthazar and on Lorenzo. And as he's talking about renting and tearing Lorenzo, he starts ripping apart the documents that the other people have given him, their suits, their lease, their bonds. He starts ripping them up with his teeth, and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Those are my documents. And of course, we haven't gotten quite enough of Horatio's madness. at this point. So he's going to have a little bit of an explanation for that before he runs away and comes back and has some more things to say to the old man. And we will get to hear all of that in tomorrow's monologue. So I'll see you then. Mwah.